Talking about horses, bringing you closer to some of the best horsemen in the world for tips, insights, and stories. Listen at home, at work, in the car, or in the saddle. This is Talking About Horses. Here's your host, Patrick King.
Hey there, gang. Patrick King here, and I want to thank you for tuning in for episode number 47 of Talking About Horses. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by Thomas and Shana Ritter. Thomas and Shana work with riders of all skill levels, all disciplines, and all types of horses. They've taught throughout the USA, Canada, Germany, Austria, the Netherlands, and Switzerland. They've published 2 books on dressage, one based on biomechanics and the other about the work in the long reins. And now they teach online courses, empowering everyday riders like you to train your horse yourself. They give you the tools to understand the what, the why, and the how. Thomas and Shana, thank you so much for joining me on Talking About Horses.
Thank you. Thank you for having us on.
Thanks for having us.
It's awesome to have you guys join me and the rest of our viewers as well. So I know we had a lot of excited people for having you guys join on here, and that's awesome. This is something I think we've been kind of messaging back and forth for quite a while about trying to put something together. So it's great to get it to happen. Can you, for anybody who's listening in, either live or playing after, can you tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Where do you want me to start?
Thomas, you're originally from Germany, correct?
Yeah, exactly. And I started riding actually like a lot of kids in my generation in a regular riding school where I had 1 lesson a week in a group, where horses go single file with side reins on and you just do simple arena patterns. Basically, that's it, right? Okay. So you don't get very far, of course, on that basis. And then I got lucky and then met some teachers who were old Neindorf students, Egon von Neindorf's students. Okay. Mm-hmm. And they took me under their wing a little bit, and then I started to learn something. And then we moved to the US, and in the US I had clinic lessons with Kalmi Kolka, especially for I don't know how many years was it, 6 years, something like that. And that gave us lots of impulses, and we learned a lot. And the method that we're using and teaching now, that's based on his teaching, or a mixture of his and the old Neindorf students that I rode with in Germany for 8 years or more, and literature that I read. And then we had a training barn in the US, and then I started to teach clinics, and the clinics became more and more, how it goes. And then we moved back to Germany, and then in Germany I did basically exclusively clinics, and then it got so tiring and overwhelming after a while that we decided to start online courses so I could spend more time at home, because the kids were complaining, and our little daughter hardly knew me because I was gone most of the time, so we switched to the online courses, and that was a good move. It helped a lot. And
I'm back.
Jeff is back here. And now we actually just moved to Portugal.
Yeah, we moved here right before the lockdown and quarantine started.
So you're very fresh moving to Portugal. Okay.
Yeah. 6 weeks, something like that.
Yeah.
Just got into the radar before that.
Right. Yeah, just in time. Wow.
Yeah.
So what spurred the move to Portugal?
Oh, everything. Better weather, the ability to have horses on land and afford it better, and then we could in Germany. Proximity to the ocean was a big one for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Shana and the German winters don't get along, and still.
There were many things I loved about Germany, but the winter weather was not one of them.
Exactly. And Shana's from California, so she always missed the ocean, and
Okay.
He doesn't have an ocean that's comparable, to the Pacific or the Atlantic coast, so it's not the same. And Portugal has a really nice coast. So.
Very nice. And so and we had friends here, and it all just developed really easily and beautifully. And so we're here, and we're loving it.
Yeah, perfect. Cool. So, Shana, Thomas said you're originally from California. Can you give us a little bit of your story?
yeah, California and Texas. My parents moved back and forth a number of times. And my background, I started in quarter horses, and I did the whole AQHA youth circuit.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
yeah, I grew up doing that, and then I had a couple of years away from horses. And when I came back to it, I started with eventing, and quickly discovered dressage through that, and fell in love. Fell absolutely head over heels in love with dressage. And I had, even when I did quarter horses, I always wanted to understand the training, how things worked, and I wanted to know not just what to do, just to push this, do this, whatever, but why, and how to teach the horse to do these things. And so dressage was just a natural, because that's really about developing the horse, mind, body, spirit, everything. And so I just, it was just a perfect fit. And and then started doing some teaching some years after I got started doing dressage, started teaching mostly children and developing my own skills, met Thomas, and we hit it off and continued to develop together, and rode also with Arthur Katas and Carl Makolka, Charles DeCunfee, Dorothy Faldezek and Thomas Faldezek, so that's my background.
Cool. And the rest is history, right? And now we get to see you through the online programs, and you've both got a lot going on with the online programs. Can you tell us a little bit about, I know there's a lot of students that are interested, that had expressed interest to me in tuning in to watch this, because they're part of your Exercise of the Month Club and that sort of thing. Can you tell us about the programs that you have going on online?
Yeah, we have a variety of things. We do have a membership site. That's our Exercise of the Month Club. We have where we teach 2 exercises a month. Right now, we're focusing on just in hand work, groundwork exercises, but sometimes they're written exercises. And then we do a bonus training. Sometimes it's on mindset. Sometimes it's on how to do something. It's any number of topics. Sometimes we've done seat clinics where some of the members submit videos, and we look at their seats and give advice, tips on what they can do to improve this or that, or what's going on, so they can kind of figure out what's going on with the problems they have going on, things like that. So every month we have something different. And so that's our membership site. And then we have a whole bunch of courses. We started with a course called the What, Why, How. And that's, we always really needed to know what to do, why, and how to do it. And so our students are the same. Our students, the people that come to us, are the same way. They need this in order to understand how to do what they need to do. They can't just be told to, go this, do that. They really want to know, what behind it, why, and how it all works together, not just this in isolation, but how it all works together. So that's what that course is really about. And then we have spin-off courses that developed as requests from our members came. They would say, hey, we really want to learn more about straightness, so we did a straightness course. We really want to learn more about connection and throughness, so we did a contact and connection course. And we have a canter course, and we have a flying changes course, and we're working on some others. We're working on a top line course, to develop the horse's top line right now.
Fantastic.
So it's something that just keeps growing into a comprehensive system where all of these, they can be enjoyed individually, but they all fit together as well.
Okay. Great. That's awesome. And so you talked about the kind of the what, how, why sort of idea. And I know you said that Shana, was what really interested you in dressage, and how you wanted to know more about that. And, it just kind of brings to mind to me how that's so much more about aids than cues, right? When we're talking about riding. And that's really, I think, what's at the heart of dressage. I have riders ask all the time, what's the difference between an aid and a cue? And it seems to me that a cue is the blue button gets this response, right? But that's not the how, why, when, where, all of that stuff. And that's really what the aids are about, huh?
Yeah, and there's no communication in a cue. A cue is a command. There's no dialogue between horse and rider. Whereas aids, it's really, the German word for aid is Hilfen, right? For aids. And it means to help. They're helps. These are things you're doing to help the horse, and it's a two-way deal. You can't help the horse if you're not taking feedback from the horse too. So it's really about the dialogue.
Exactly. Yeah, you want to be able to shape the movement. You may give an aid to initiate the movement, so to speak, right? But then you also use the same, areas of your body, the leg, the seat, the thigh, the knee, the hands, and so on, to receive feedback, as the horse is responding or not responding. And then you can shape the horses. You give feedback to the feedback. So it becomes this feedback loop, so to speak, right? You ask the horse a question, he gives you an answer, then you come back with saying, yes, perfect, that's what I wanted, or that's sort of what I wanted, but not totally. Let me rephrase it, or change a little bit of this, change a little bit of that. So you can shape and mold the movement and the horse's balance through that dialogue between you, your aids, and the horse. So it's ongoing, so to speak. You listen, you give input, the horse gives you feedback, you listen to the feedback, you give input again, rather than pushing a button and then sitting back and waiting for something complex to happen, right?
Right. And that reminds me of something I've heard Charles de Country say. You mentioned him. That's I'm probably going to botch it, but he says something about, you're not just riding the horse, you're shaping his energies.
Right.
Yes, that's absolutely it.
It's a good way of describing it. Absolutely. It has a lot to do with energy flow that you're directing and shaping. It's like water, that you channel in certain directions, or electricity, and so on.
Or like a sculptor or a potter that shapes the clay, and uses the forces of their body to help shape the clay, and movement. You need the movement, especially when you're working on the wheel. You need that movement, and that together helps you shape. And that's what we do with the horse. We use the movement of the horse and our body, our energy, to help shape the horse.
And hopefully not block, right, or impede, or
right, to learn how to get out of the horse's way more and more.
Get out of the way. Exactly. So that's kind of bringing to mind also, and I love how these conversations always seem to flow. There was a blog post that I saw recently from you guys about the rider's aids as being something like boundaries, right? So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I mean, the aids have all kinds of functions in a way, but and one of them is to channel the energy so it doesn't flow all over the place. It's a little bit like digging a canal for irrigation, right? You don't want the water to just flow anywhere completely indiscriminately, but you want it to go to certain places, right? So you dig a little trench here, dig a little trench there, and the water stays in that trench, right? And so I sometimes compare the horse and with a boat, and the aids form this canal where the water flows, and the ship. And then if you picture the ship getting off course, rotating a little, then it will bump into the wall, right? And the wall will reflect it back into the middle of the canal. So if the shoulder drifts to the right, you can be there with your right knee and rein, and give it a little nudge and move the shoulder back over. Exactly. Or if the haunches go left, you can catch them with your left leg and send them back, into the middle. And if your seat is correct and balanced, and you have all the body parts in the right places, the horse almost self-correct, because they will bump into the boundary, right? And then you just send that impulse back, so you don't have to do a lot yourself. You're there, you're watching, in a sense, you're observing the horse, you're providing that channel. As long as the horse stays in the channel, all contact is light, basically, right? There's no pressure anywhere in that sense. And when the horse, for example, if the horse leans on, with the shoulder to the right, he will lean on your right rein, so that contact gets bigger. And then, hopefully the horse will find that little unpleasant as well. And then you can give this little impulse back, and the horse goes back to the middle, the contact is light again. And same thing when the horse bumps into your leg, you can return the impulse, and then the contact with your leg is light again, right? And the horse stays right in the middle. So that would be the goal, so to speak, that we're always so balanced and so surrounding the horse with our aids, that the horse knows that there are, there's sort of a left boundary, a right boundary, etc. And then they have to stay in the middle between that. And the more balanced they get, the straighter they become, the more they stay there by themselves, and the less you have to bring them back into the middle. You know, when they're green or you have a retraining horse that's, you know, badly ridden, then you have to, you know, adjust more, of course, because they fall out of balance, they get crooked, you know, every couple of steps, and then you have to bring them back in the middle and then see if the horse will continue on his own there, and then, you know, eventually he stays there longer. So.
Right. And I think that's a really important point for riders to think about, is it's the boundary on either side, and presumably also front to back, right? So it's the boundaries everywhere, but there's the harmony and the lightness within those boundaries, that we're not clamping, we're not squeezing, we're not, you know, more leg, the whole way through.
Homeostasis. You want a homeostasis where everything is operating in balance within these boundaries. It's like the boundaries of a balloon or a bubble, you know, and it has its own little cosmos going on in there.
Yeah. I mean, the old masters used to say that you should feel the warmth of the horse's leg through a horse's rib cage through the leg of your boot, or you should feel the hairs on the horse's side with your leg. So that's how light it should be, right? The contact, and it's really just, you know, you have enough contact to feel what's going on, but no pressure, right? And if the horse is in self-carriage, the rein contact will be light as well, right? And when he loses balance, of course, he may lean on you, you know, but then you can rebalance, release, and then hopefully he'll be lighter.
Yeah, even that is an indication when the horse is speaking to us, the horse is aiding us in a way that, hey, I need some help. I need you to reestablish life here. When the horse gets dull and leans on you or whatever, you know, it's a sign that you need to do something to help the horse here.
Yeah, the rein contact is always an indication of what's going on in the horse, in a sense. It tells you something about the balance, the straightness, energy level, maybe blockages, muscle blockages, or false bends, leaks, you know, where the energy leaks out. This all results in certain, you know, changes in the rein contact, you know. So if the rein contact is not perfect, then you can probably trace that back to a loss of balance, loss of straightness, loss of impulsion, or too much impulsion. If the horse gets too hot, you know, and has too much energy and doesn't know what to do with it, then you'll feel it in rein contact too. And
so that makes sense. And in that way, the bridle then becomes the feedback system. Right?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. It's exactly. It's like a thermometer or an measuring instrument with which you can read all kinds of parameters of the gait, really. So you can feel a lot of different things in the reins, you know, which is why I find rein contact useful, right? Some people think it's great to ride with a looped rein, but I always think that you're missing out. You're not getting information through that channel, you know, and through the rein you get so much information from all kinds of body parts, not just head, mouth, you know, neck or so, but you can feel the whole body in the rein. You can feel the hind legs, you can feel back, shoulders, and so on, you know, through the reins. The balance, the straightness, and so on.
In a way, you know, they're just extensions of your arms and hands, of your seat too, but you know, it's all of that connected, and then because it's connected to the horse, it connects back into the horse's body. It's through there, it's like you can reach into the horse's body and feel all around the horse's body to figure out what's going on. You know, so yeah, it's very diagnostic.
Yeah. Well, that makes perfect sense. And then, of course, then it's our job as the rider to develop that awareness and that attunement to know what's being said, right? To understand the feedback that we're getting, because we're getting the feedback whether we recognize it or not. So it's our job to be able to recognize that.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. Egon von Eindhoven used to say in lessons that the horse always talks to you. No? Now it's up to you to listen and to also have a conversation with the horse.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Absolutely. So that actually brings me to a thought here. I know we want to talk about long reining. And maybe some in-hand work. And I know, you know, I do a lot of teaching of in-hand work, and we talk about feeling the horse's body. You know, I'll talk when I'm working on the bridle, like, oh, this horse's left stifle is a little sticky today, or that rib cage on the right side, and you can feel all that through the reins. So I feel like that's a great way for riders to start building their awareness before they ever go topside, right? And it's a great way to help the horse then on the ground learn how to activate, use the specific muscles that we want without the encumbrance of the rider. You guys do quite a bit with the long reining, and I've got actually a copy of I'll show everybody here, a copy of your long reining book. This is one of my favorites, and thank you very much for this. I tell riders all the time, it's one of the most comprehensive resources for long reining that I've found. So fantastic work there. And Shana, you were talking about even building the top line through the long reining. So can we talk a little bit about long reining and, you know, building the sensitivities, building the horse athletically, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, you know, well, it's kind of two related but separate things. You know, the top line is the musculature of the horse. And right now we're working on preparing a course on how to improve the horse's top line through groundwork, including long reining, but also the work in hand, the lunging, and the double lunging. So it's and flexions, you know, and other body work too. You know, like some Masterson inspired and Feldenkrais inspired work with the horse to really help the horse to free themselves up so they can develop their top line.
Right. Yeah, I mean, long reining you can use for a number of different things, really. I mean, you can use it to show a horse in all the movements, all the upper level movements, which is great fun. You see the Spanish riding school solo at the long rein; they do everything. They do one tempo changes and piaffe and passage, and it's really amazing to watch. It's fun to do. But you can also do it with the lower level horses. In the past, I found it was very, very helpful in as a diagnostic tool. Like when I felt like I'm stuck in the saddle, I don't know where the problem is coming from. Then you go behind the horse, you know, long rein, and then you see how the hind legs are moving, how the back is moving, how the shoulders and the neck are moving, how
the parts are connected or not connected, how the horse you see so much.
How the energy flows or doesn't flow, how the forces in the horse travel or not, you know. So, and then that often helps to get a better, more complete picture, you know. Then you get a visual impression that may explain some of the things you're feeling, or you may fill in some holes of stuff you're not feeling. Then, you know, when you're in the saddle, you know, stuff that's going on and you can't feel it, but then you can see it. That's something I found really useful. I also found that it helps with the timing of the aids, right? Because then you see when the legs touch down. When you're riding, you know, some people can't feel if the leg is up or down yet. At the long rein or in hand, you see it, so you can develop a feel, because you get a little impulse in the rein when the hind leg touches down, right? So it's like a little pulse essentially. So it's a light little, you know, but it's an impulse that you can feel. And when you feel that in hand or at the long rein, then you can try and remember that when you're riding, and you probably are able to feel it then as well. And you can practice your rein aids and all kinds of different things without having to worry about the seat, right?
The seat,
so
the legs,
sitting the trot and that sort of thing, right?
Right.
So that helps, and so you can develop or you can improve your feel and the coordination of the aids, the timing of the aids, and then when you get back in the saddle, you ride better. You know, you can take that with you. So that to me was a really useful thing. You can use long reining to rehab horses that were injured. I've done that in the past too. When you're a little worried about stressing the legs with your body weight, right? Then it's sometimes easier on the horse's tendons
on
and
the
joints,
legs and on the back. You know, if their back is too weak to really carry a rider, you know, or to carry, you know, like he weighs a little bit more than me, you know, so you know he might resort to long reining, whereas I might still ride the horse, you know, you know, because he, you know. The weight on the horse's back is significant too.
Yeah. Or if a tall rider has to work with a smaller horse, you know, then sometimes it's better to spend more time working in hand, long reining, lunging than riding, you know, just to protect the horse a little bit. You can teach the horse certain movements at the long rein, or in hand, so that the horse develops an understanding, you know, of how to move his body and which leg goes where and so on. And then if you do it in hand at the long rein, the horse just has to deal with his own body, his own balance, and doesn't have to worry about balancing the rider on top. And then, you know, if he understands it on the ground, you know, with you on the ground, then it becomes easier when you're in the saddle. Then it's a smaller learning step for the horse. To do the movement. So we use the other work in hand also to do the turn on the forehand in motion, for example. You know, that's sometimes hard for horses when they've never done it, and you want to do it in the saddle the first time. Some horses then think they fall over and they're not really sure of the balance, right? So it's easy to do this on the ground a little bit, and you can guide them, and that makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, you can explain a lot to the horse this way.
Yeah.
So you can, break it down so the horse can go step by step through something so that they don't get overwhelmed or, worrying about the rider's way to the rider's age, contradicting what they're doing and so on. You can really just break it down. And you can more easily reassure the horse too, I find, that you can, if the horse gets nervous or, claustrophobic or upset about something or whatever, you're right there and you can quickly, calm the horse.
Yeah.
It's a little bit easier when you're on the ground than when you're in the saddle.
Yeah. I also find that it actually improves the relationship with the horse.
Absolutely.
I always get the sense that the horse is appreciated when you're down on the ground with them and working just as hard as they are. When you're trotting and cantering at the long rein, then you work just as hard as the horse. Right. So, and I always get a sense that they like that, they appreciate that. And you're close, when you're doing the long reining up close, then you can touch the horse, touch the croup or the hind legs. That has advantages, and horses like that.
Yeah, they tend to enjoy it. It tends to help the relationship.
Yeah. Now recently I'm using the long reining, or have been using the long reining with a little project horse here. It's a horse that had developed a habit of always dropping the back and inverting pretty extremely. It was really hard to get that horse on the bit and to lift the back and so on. So
his top line was very deteriorated. The under leg was very developed. The back was very dropped. The hind legs were out behind.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I started with double lunging, and then I had set the two lunge lines up so they come from behind through the rings in the surcingle and then attached to the snaffle, right? Which means you can change direction, and go behind the horse. You can convert that into a long rein. So I would do that, let the horse go around me in a circle and go straight and so on. And then I would get behind the horse and maybe change direction, then engage the new inside hind leg, like change from one circle to the next one, and then grab that new inside hind leg and send it over, forward and over under the center of gravity, and then do a
sort of
circle
like a leg yield, or what we
Exactly.
call enlarging the circle in our courses. And this was incredibly effective. It became this sort of hybrid between double lunging and long reining. It was more advanced than really ground driving because it was a lateral movement, and it was very gymnastically beneficial for this horse.
Yeah, going back and forth, basically double lunge a little, long rein a little, double lunge a little, So it's a very quick switch back and forth, and then you don't have to change the setup of the lunge lines the way I have them rigged up, and that turned out to be extremely effective. This engage one hind leg and then turn, and then you maybe engage the other hind leg and turn the other way, So, and that could be like Shana says, enlarging the circle where the hips and shoulders move out together, same distance, same time, right? Or you can do a little bit of a shoulder in position or leg yield from the inside leg, so the croup is on a slightly bigger circle than the shoulders. That helps too.
Yeah, depending on what the horse needs.
Exactly. Yeah. And then follow that up with maybe a volte or so, so basically sidestep and then turn, sidestep and turn. That turned out to really stretch the muscles on the outside, bend, and he brought the inside hind leg more under the body. And then as a result, he would drop the neck and lift the back, and then he got a lot rounder and contact got a lot better.
Setting him off in better balance as he's changing direction that way. That's fantastic. Now, do you find a lot working within that kind of hybrid long reining, long lining idea, or long reining, double lunging? Do you find that when you go to the double lunging portion, you're able to let the horse reach out and stretch through the top line that you might not be able to do necessarily in the long reining?
Yeah. Traditionally, long reining is really a collecting type of work, right? There is no forward downward stretching, because it also comes from a time when forward downward stretching wasn't a thing yet, when everything was about collection, right? And but with the double lunging, you can let the horse stretch, and that was a big focus, to get that horse to stretch forward downward, so you can put him together a little bit, bring the hind legs closer to the front legs and the left legs closer to the right legs, so the wheelbase gets smaller, right? And then he can lift the back and get round, and then from that more compact posture balance and the round top line, you can then let him stretch forward, downward.
And then
right?
he
And
would,
then,
whereas
exactly.
before, no matter what you did, he would just go around, you know, like a giraffe.
Right.
Go around like a giraffe. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a fantastic way to, like you talked about, kind of rehab those horses whose natural tendencies, even in their free state, is not to go into that stretch. But you've got to, through the collected work, through the connected work, help him find that he does want to stretch and use his body better.
Exactly. When that's such a habit for the horse to drop the back and invert, then he would never discover that forward downward is comfortable, right? On his own, he would go around 100 years with the head up in the air, and it would never occur to him to stretch. And when you bring the hind legs closer to the front legs, and you put some weight on the hind legs, so they have to flex, then that's like us doing squats, and flexing our hip and knee joints, and that becomes more work for the horse. And then he discovers that if he lowers the neck, it feels easier, it feels pleasant. And then they discover that, oh, it's actually not such a bad thing to put my head down, right? And then they ask, can I please? And then you do, right? And that one horse, that was talking about in particular was interesting. I did some work in hand too, and then on the left rein, when I asked that left hind leg to pick up and come under a little bit more, he felt that now there is more weight on the hind legs, and then to offset that, he lowered the head and neck, right? So that he didn't really want to carry more weight behind, but now since the hind legs were underneath him more, then so what do I do now with that, right? So he lowered the neck, and
in a good way.
Yeah, exactly. So the nose was on the ground basically, and then I allowed it because it was a step in the right direction, right? So too high.
His own discovery of a better way within his body. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, they end up experimenting with their body. They discover that there are other postures they could take, or other balances that they could try out, and then discover there are postures that are more comfortable than what they've been doing, right? And then you just reward that, and then great, then they want to go back there because it felt good.
Exactly.
So they learn a new way of using their body. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. And I find it's always the case, I tell my students all the time, better movement always feels better. Better posture always feels better. Better balance always feels better. But sometimes the body is so used to working against itself that it's hard to find those things.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, these habits, it's like when you're driving on some, off-road, whatever path, with deep grooves, from other vehicles, and you get sucked into it basically, and it's very hard to get out of those ruts, in the little road, right? And then the shallower the ruts become, the easier it is to get out of them. And in a sense, by showing the horses different posture options, these ruts get a little less deep, and then eventually they form a new habit, and then it becomes a lot easier. The beginning is always the hardest, I find, and then gradually, especially as the horse discovers that you're not trying to torture him, but you're trying to help him, right? To get more comfortable, find a better balance, also to deal with the rider's weight in a better way, in a more pleasant way, then they become more and more eager to do what you're asking them to do, right? And initially, of course, when you're changing the balance, sometimes they get a little nervous because they're not really sure what that means and where that leads. And it's like, oh my God, I don't have a leg on that side. I can't move that way. I'll fall over, right? So they get a little nervous.
And they're flight animals, so being out of balance is not a good thing for them by instinct.
Exactly.
So they get scared. It makes sense that they get scared.
Yeah, and when they take that leap of faith and they try what you're asking them to do, and they realize, oh, I've got two legs on that side as well, and they don't collapse.
Better balance there. Then they go, oh, and they learn to trust you and trust your suggestions. That in the riding, really what we're making are suggestions. We're asking the horse to do things. We're making suggestions. And we would like the horse to say, oh, yeah, I'll give that a try. But they have to learn that, what we're going to suggest is actually going to help them feel better.
Right. Yeah, and you can see the wheels turning sometimes, that the horse thinks, oh no, I don't have a joint there, or I don't have a leg there, I fall down, I'll die, and then they do it, it's like, oh, I'm still alive, and it didn't even hurt.
Never mind.
Exactly. Just kidding. Yeah.
And then come to think of it, this actually doesn't feel so bad. It actually feels better than before, right? And then once they've taken that step, in their thinking process, then they're much more willing to go back to that same place. Then they won't resist. The first time they may resist because they think, I'm going to die. I know it. I'm going to die, you know. And then when they've experienced that it's actually better to be over there than over here, then, you know, they'll be much more willing to try.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And so much of that, I really love your analogy about driving down the road with the ruts in it, you know, because, you know, you can get your car out of those ruts, but the first time you hit a slick spot or something like that, you're going to fall right back in it, you know, and it's so much the same way with our horses, right? The body will kind of return to the habits, but with the horses, as well as with driving on those roads, eventually you can get the roads worn smooth. You know, the horses may slip back into that, but the more, I think it's similar to the Feldenkrais work, right? Where we could say that the Feldenkrais gives the body more options, right? Similarly with your horses, you're giving them more options and they're learning how they can be and learning what feels better.
Yeah, exactly. There's a big similarity between dressage and Feldenkrais work, and that's actually how we met Catherine McCrum, our Feldenkrais instructor, who is now teaching
in
the
our
course
courses,
in
yeah.
our courses. Yeah, she, you know, she's a writer, and she came to us, and then she contacted us because she's found that, oh, this is very similar to what I do in Feldenkrais, you know, as a Feldenkrais teacher. And so we joke sometimes that dressage is a little like Feldenkrais, it's a little like yoga, it's a little like bodybuilding and weightlifting. It's a little bit like track and field sometimes, right? So that's all these aspects to it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit more about the Feldenkrais work. And I want to get back to working on building the top line with our horses, especially the therapeutic side of things, that sort of stuff. But you know, since we kind of touched into it, let's talk about the Feldenkrais for riders. You guys have been utilizing the Feldenkrais teachings in a lot of your online courses lately. And I know when we chatted a little bit yesterday, you said there's some things that have even changed from your perspective or from your point of doing things because of Feldenkrais. And there's a lot now of the students that I work with are aware of the Feldenkrais work. I have a couple clinic hosts that are Feldenkrais practitioners, which is fantastic at clinics. On the lunch break, we all get a Feldenkrais class, you know, the body awareness classes, that sort of thing. So tell us a little bit, first tell us from your perspective, what is Feldenkrais work and why does it fit so well for dressage?
Good question. What is it? I mean, it's really a way of, or method of becoming aware of what you're actually doing, right? Where your bones are in space, and exploring all the options, all the movement options and posture options that you have.
And through that awareness, you can, just the awareness begins to change what you're doing. Right. Just becoming aware without trying to actively change it. Just bringing greater awareness, you start to change what you're doing because the body essentially wants to be in balance. It wants homeostasis. And the more you can bring your awareness to where you're out of symmetry, perhaps we should say, the body starts to re-assimilate and straighten things out. And so it's incredibly subtle and profound.
It's amazing how much looser you are, how much more balanced and straighter you are after a Feldenkrais lesson, you know.
Every time.
Yeah, it's really, really amazing. It's yeah, I mean, I always had issues with tightness in my back and my hamstrings and stuff, especially on the right side. And I used to stretch, but that didn't really help. At least not in the long run, at least, you know. Yeah. And with the Feldenkrais lessons, I feel like the muscles let go. They're a lot more relaxed without stretching. It's like you do nothing almost, right? Or very, very little, small, subtle little things, but you feel a lot better afterwards. It's mind-blowing.
It's like helping the body to get out of its way. You know, remove where you're blocking, where you're bracing, sort of like what we're trying to do with the horses. You know, you remove where you're blocking and bracing so that your body isn't working hard to support those things. When that work is eliminated, the body can do what it needs to do.
Yeah, and I think, you know, if Feldenkrais is used intensively or more widely in you know, for riders, it potentially shaves off many years of the learning process, learning to sit. I think people could learn to sit better much faster instead of torturing themselves with lunge lessons without stirrups,
and
you know,
bouncing for years and struggling with
around.
Yeah, because it's a hard journey for a lot of riders, and if you know, we can find any way to help riders to expedite that process and remove some of the torture, you know, for horse and rider, then it's good. Then it's good for both horse and rider. And of course, we try to apply also the concepts we're learning through Feldenkrais and apply them towards working with the horses. So it's really, it's a very dynamic process. It's really interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, one of the things that I really like about the Feldenkrais work and applying it to how we work in hand or under saddle with the horses is that idea of slightly flying under the radar with the nervous system, right? You know, where you've got, like you're talking about stretching, you know, and that being a problem. When there's a spot of tension, don't go all the way to tension, right? Take it just under and kind of let the brain and the body sort of sit with that, and then the tension begins to release itself. And I feel like that's super beneficial with our horses as well, not to try to ram and cram, you know, through a movement or through a position, the riders or the horses, right? Kind of take them to that edge, fly just under the radar, and let the, you know, the parasympathetic state of the nervous system come through and work out some of those challenges.
Yes.
Yeah, it takes the less is more principle to a whole different level. You know, it's really amazing. Yeah, it's and in the lessons that, you know, Catherine McCrum does in our courses, she often says that, you know, if you feel discomfort, then don't move at all. Just imagine you're moving, and even that's amazing. It's like, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, because what is it? You can't think of thought without the body making a change, right? Yeah. Super fantastic. And so then let's take that. Let's flow back with that into building the top line, into talking about this work with our horses. I know, Shana, you said that you were working on a bit of a project with the top line building. Is that correct?
Putting together a new course on called the Top Line Makeover. It's how to use groundwork to help improve the horse's top line, because that's what a lot of people are going to be struggling with. Yeah, especially as a lot of people are bringing their horses back into work after being on quarantine. You know, a lot of places, there are many people that have been able to work their horses throughout this, and they're very lucky, but not everybody has been so fortunate.
Yeah, in Europe, a lot of people weren't able to see their horses, or if they could go to the barn, they were not allowed to ride. You know, I think in France and Spain.
They absolute complete lockdown.
Yeah. And they were saying that even if you have the horse on your property, you shouldn't ride, because
shouldn't. It was
well,
illegal,
you're not allowed to,
prohibited to ride.
Because if you fall down and you need to go to the hospital, you're taking a bed away from the patient, right? So that was that rationale. So a lot of people either can't do anything with their horse because they can't go to the barn, or they're just allowed to do groundwork of some sort, right?
Or they're, you know, self-limiting because of that,
true.
Because they don't want to have to go to the hospital if something happens, or because if they had to go to the hospital. One woman that I talked to today said that she is allowed to ride, but she's not, because her husband would not be able to take care of their animals if something happened to her. So and maybe this is, you know, overkill, but maybe not. So you know, there's a lot of people that have not been able to ride, and their horses are losing their top line. I've gotten pictures today of a horse whose top line was like, you know, after just a couple of weeks off.
Wow. Yeah. It's amazing how fast they can lose ground that way.
Some of them,
and you can rebuild it quickly if you're doing the right work. So we're putting together a short program to help riders do that, and a guided process using the work in hand, and the lunging, and the double lunging, and the long reining, and like I said, also some body work. You know, some Masterson, Jim Masterson inspired work, some Feldenkrais inspired work. You know, to influence the horse on the ground. So this is really fun. I'm really looking forward to it. It's a brand new thing. It's kind of something that will be shaped as we go. As happens with all of our new courses, we let the course inform us how we're going to proceed. So we have an outline of how we're going to do it, but you know, according to the feedback of the participants, we may add more in, change something, you know, increase the emphasis somewhere, depending on what people need.
Okay, perfect. And where can people find out more about this if they're interested in that course? Yeah,
well, the course is not open yet. We're just putting it together, but we actually have put together, because a lot of people are interested in starting the work at the long rein. And so we've put together a quick start guide, a free guide on how to get started with the work at the long rein, what to do, how to get the horse started. Basically, the way we do it is with the Portuguese work in hand. That's how we usually start the horse. And so this outlines how to do that. We included some exercises and solutions to common problems. These are excerpts from the long rein book. So,
Oh, perfect. Good.
yeah. Yeah, so it's not the whole book. Obviously, we can't give that away, but these are excerpts from the book, and it's available for download on our website. That's artisticdressage.com.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, I want to be respectful of your time, and we're just about at an hour here, just a little over. The time goes super fast. My goodness. Do you mind? We have a couple questions that came in from listeners ahead of time. Do you mind if we touch on those?
Yeah, sure.
Let's do it.
Great. So we've got a question from Helen, and Helen says, I'm currently rehabbing from some muscle and saddle damage, my pony in hand working long and low, and I'm encouraging the forward stretch from the base of the withers. When I start riding again, how do I influence him between the long and low and a working frame without pulling? I get a bit confused with what I should be doing with my own body and hands, and I don't want to go back to my old habits. My pony's also a bit backward thinking and on the forehand.
Okay, great question.
That is a good question. Yeah, I actually did a newsletter article on that subject. It's about shortening the reins, because when you ride, people always tell you shorten the reins, right? The teachers. And in a sense that, when you let the horse stretch forward and downward, you have a long rein, so then you have to pick up the reins somehow. And that shorten the reins has to be translated into some action steps, right? And I always think of it in terms of use your leg to get the hind leg to step under the body first. So you pick up the reins from back to front, right? The leg comes first, bring the hind leg under the body, sit on the hind leg to flex it a little bit, then pick up the slack. Because as the hind leg comes under and flexes, the posture will start to change, and or the horse will be willing to then lift the head and neck up a little bit and become a little rounder, and then you can shorten the rein. And then you go through that cycle. Once is not enough. Once leg, seat, rein, release, that's won't be enough, but you do that 3, 4, 5, 6 times until you have the frame that you like. And I usually would recommend doing this on a circle, maybe with a slight shoulder 4 position, where you use your inside leg to ask the inside hind leg to cross very slightly, right? Because then the horse is less likely to brace the rib cage and the neck musculature. Because if you're riding a straight line and then you pick up the reins, a lot of horses will just brace, right? And then they go against you.
The back,
Exactly. Yeah. And you can avoid that largely when you go on a circle and you engage or enlarge a little
just
bit.
Slightly. All of this is subtle. The driving the hind leg underneath. It's not like a drive that makes the horse dart off and slip away from you. It's just enough to invite the hind leg under. And the sitting on the hind leg is just enough to basically receive the energy of the hind leg into the seat. So you accept it and receive it in the seat, and then you gather up the difference with the rein contact, so that we're not starting with the reins just pulling the horse up and in. This has no benefit at all.
Right, exactly. So you're, in essence, you're sending his hind leg forward to the bridle, and the rein is
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Our old teachers used to say the leg brings the horse to the seat brings the horse to the hand, and then you can receive the energy, recycle the energy, bend, half hold, whatever you need to do, right, with the rein. But it always starts with the leg, getting the hind leg to step under you, so you feel like now I can sit on that hind leg. And everything develops from there, essentially.
Yeah, perfect. And I love that suggestion of the shoulder 4 on a bit of a circle, because you're encouraging better balance anyway by getting that hind leg to slightly step more toward the center of mass.
Exactly. So that the inside hind leg steps slightly in front of the outside one. And it could be really minimal, so it's almost invisible, but you feel it, right? And so if you think of moving the horse's croup 1 hoof width, out, just minimal, right? And that creates a better bend, and it creates a bit of a weight shift onto the outside hind, so that frees up the inside hind to step forward and under the body, and brings the inside hip of the horse forward, which then starts the bend, essentially, right? And when the inside hip of the horse can come forward, then it's easy for the rest of the spine to bend, along the curve of your circle line. You know, whereas if the inside hip is back because the inside hind leg is trailing, still in the barn, then
Right.
you won't get a good bend, right? So
Yeah, that's perfect. And it sounds like the work that Helen has done from the ground would have already been preparing this horse with those ideas. So
Foundation.
that's a perfect
Really good idea. Very
exactly.
smart.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And
Good. That's
all
fantastic.
do that on the saddle.
Great, great. Let's see. So Lori posed a question. I'm very curious about something that Thomas mentioned in the most recent Exercise of the Month live. He said, "Oh, this is exciting." She was talking to me about this and cooking some ideas in my head, but I hadn't seen this one yet, so I'm not sure. He said he's writing an article about something that he called the continuum, and is he ready to elaborate on that?
Yeah, it's done actually.
I just haven't released it yet.
Exactly.
Oh, cool.
It's coming.
Yeah, it's I like to think of movements as points on a continuum, because you know, a lot of people think of movements in a very fixed and rigid ways. Like the FEI rulebook says, the shoulder in looks like this, haunches in looks like this, right? But if you're training a horse and you're riding the first shoulder in ever with that horse, it's not going to look like the description in the FEI rulebook, right? So you have to start where you are and then chart a course for the horse, the little learning steps to get from where you are to, you know, the final product, like the FEI would like to see it, for example, right? So I use as an example, you're moving the croup away from the wall. And that could eventually become a haunches in, or it could become a counter shoulder in, or whatever. But you have to start somewhere, right? You have to make priorities. Like what's the most important thing at the moment to get from here to there, right? And so I would start maybe by asking the horse to move the croup away from the wall and then back to the wall, right? To create mobility in the hips, and that changes the lateral balance a little and this and that. And at that stage, you know, I wouldn't expect the horse to bend perfectly, you know. And maybe he won't even stay on the bit in that transition into the new movement, because he's now losing balance for a moment. It's like, oh my God, I'm going to fall down, right? And then the head goes up, and then he realizes, oh no, I'm not falling. And then head goes down, it's okay, I'm safe, right? And then he learns gradually to do this smoothly, and then he doesn't have to invert, and the head can stay where it belongs, and so on. And then, so initially it's more of a leg yield in a way, right? And as you know, as the horse gets more skilled at that movement, croup in and back out, then you can catch the hind leg that is now on the inside track, but in terms of the bend, it'll be the outside one, because the horse will be looking to the outside. Initially, it's easier for the horse to sidestep and look against the direction of travel. You know, that's easier than bending in the direction of travel. So that leg yield will gradually develop into a counter shoulder in. As you catch the outside hind instead of letting it escape, and the leg yield, maybe the outside hind leg drifts a little bit, you know, but you can't get everything at once, right? You have to have a little priority list, so to speak, in your mind. And then you, over time, catch that outside hind leg, direct it under the body. So now the horse is starting to actually bend properly. So your leg yield turns into a counter shoulder in. And now if you take that hind leg, that's the outside one, in the counter shoulder in, and send it more forward under the body so that that hip starts to come forward, you can change the bend, and the counter shoulder in becomes a haunches in, right? And so you can develop something from a crude beginning to a sophisticated end product, right? But it's like a continuum. And then of course, in real life, mistakes happen, right? So now your counter shoulder in looks more like a leg yield again because you lost the outside hind, right? Or you try to ride haunches in and the horse loses balance and changes the bend and looks to the outside of the arena. Oh, and now it's more like a counter shoulder in or leg yield.
The
Not
horse
like
comes
a haunches
above the bit,
yeah, exactly.
or you know, any number of mistakes can happen along the way.
Yeah. So you're moving on that continuum a little bit back and forth, you know, and then ultimately, you know, you'll be where you want to be, but you have to you know, have an idea of this, like Shana says, this roadmap on which you can take the horse from a beginning or wherever you are at the moment to the final finished, polished
It's a
product.
process, and every part of that process is important.
Exactly,
It gets you, closer to that. You don't just start here and end up here.
Yeah.
You have to go on that journey, mistakes and all. And that continuum lays the groundwork for those mistakes and shows how, this can happen and that can happen. And it's all part of the dynamic process of getting to the finished product.
It takes the pressure off, because you often see this attitude of either it's perfect or it's shit, right? So to speak, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's horrible. I mean, it sets you up for failure and frustration, and the horse too.
Anxiety for the riders,
yeah.
No wonder they're afraid to do anything. And then when they do, they do it with so much tension in their body because it's going to be perfect, and they might ruin their horse if it's not. And this is ridiculous. You're not going to ruin your horse by trying.
Exactly. And when you're thinking. We're thinking of the continuum, and then a mistake happens, then you don't get panicky. It's like, oh my God, this is horrible. But it's like, okay, I just moved a little back to that end of the spectrum, and now I want to go a little bit more towards that end of the spectrum. So it's like, no big deal.
And you play within
fix it,
the
put it back together.
Yeah, you play within it and travel back and forth within it so that you gradually bring the horse closer to the ideal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's a working relationship with the movements.
Yeah, exactly. We have even an exercise where you go back and forth between leg yield and haunches in, right? So you increase the angle to 45 degrees, bend the horse slightly to the outside, just to, to establish that sideways movement. And then you come with the opposite leg and rein, reduce the angle to 30 degrees. And by doing that, you create the bend of the haunches in. And then you come to the outside leg and try to stay in that a little bit. And then when you feel like things are starting to get sticky, falling apart, change the bend, more angle, easier movement for the horse, right? And then back into the more difficult movement, like easier, harder, And then so it's fluid, so you don't get into this trench warfare where the horse is digging his feet in and you're pulling and you're pushing, but it's like you stay flowing and moving.
And what I really like about this is it produces horses that do the movements as living entities instead of like some dead thing. Like a lot of horses, they just go, oh yeah, I know shoulder in, and they just barrel on through doing shoulder in, and you're just up there saying hello, and you can't modify it either because they think they know it, because they've been taught to just go on rote and not check in. And this teaches the horse to really check in every step of the way. It doesn't mean you're micromanaging the horse, but the dialogue is going all throughout it. And that's what I really like. I really like when the horse is really with you every step of the way, and a subtle change, and you can create a subtle change in the horse for better or for worse, but hopefully for better.
Right. Well, that goes back into what we were talking about earlier, with it being the dialogue, right? The continuous flow and the shaping the energies. And I really love the description of the exercise you're talking about, that leg yield into the travers, into the haunches in, because it's such a dynamic change of balance and movement within something that it really isn't a change of bend necessarily. So it can be super challenging for the horse to figure out, where does my body need to go, what needs to release, what needs to activate, that sort of thing. The idea of it being a continuum sounds like you're promoting the flow, rather than like what you're talking about, Shana, that kind of staccato, stuck rote, and now we go from H to F on this, and this is what happens here, and there's what we go there, and we check off the box, and that exercise is done. But it's that living movement, that dynamic space within that. That's really cool. I like that.
And that's when the movements have biomechanical potential to improve the horse. When the horse just goes on rote, you're not really impacting the horse's body beneficially.
Exactly. Yeah, that makes so much sense.
A lot of dressage riders have a bit of a static, rigid idea, and that's sort of the death of the movement and the art and the healthy movement, healthy posture. It's better to think of everything as flowing like water in a little creek bed, goes left and right and over an obstacle and around an obstacle and so on. If you keep everything flowing, then you don't lock up, the horse doesn't lock up, you stay mentally more in a flow state as well, and don't spin your wheels, like it's not working, so I try harder, right? That's sort of often the go-to, right?
Right, exactly.
Stuck in the mud with your car, you floor the gas pedal because you want to drive out of there, right?
Yeah, so true. True. Absolutely. Well, and I love what you said there too about the value in the movement, because the value, it's the dynamic movement rather than the rigid movement that brings value to the horse.
Yeah, exactly. And when you think of the history of dressage, I mean, it came from a practical application in warfare, in hunting, bullfighting, whatever, depending on which country, you're thinking of. The horses don't know, where the bull is going next. The horses don't know where the enemy is coming from next. So the idea, or the secret to survival is that you have to be able to stop anytime. You have to be able to go anytime. You have to be able to turn anytime, anywhere, right? You have to be able to change the bend, do a transition,
Stay on the aids.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. As a rider, you have to stay in the saddle.
So we incorporate that a little bit into our exercises, that you ride maybe turns in funny places where they're not necessarily in the dressage tests, where the horse may not expect it, right? Or ride movements on different lines, that don't ride the shoulder in always on the wall. Maybe ride it on the center line, ride it on a diagonal, ride it on the quarter line, somewhere, anywhere, right? Yeah. So then you can check, has the horse really understood the movement, or is he just going by rote? Like Shana was saying, there are horses that you can put in a shoulder in and they stay there the whole long side, but you could not leave the long side, right? You couldn't ride a vaulted, you couldn't go on a diagonal, or
and you can't modify the shoulder. And you should be able to increase the ankle or decrease the angle at will. The horse should allow you to do this, but some horses don't. They're just going, and it's like, you're up here whether you want to or not, rider. I'm going on my shoulder.
Right. Yeah, and that's the horse that's on autopilot rather than with the aids.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So that's very important to us, that the horses are always attentive, always listening, and always thinking. We always want the horse to think with us, and so that you can modify things anytime. Like you should be able to stop anytime, anywhere, right? Whatever you're doing, you should be able to stop and then move in a different direction. Yes. Like if you ride a shoulder in down the long side, stop, full pass away from the wall, right? And then something else, maybe continue your shoulder in on that inside track. That's a great test of whether the horse was listening to your outside aids in the shoulder in, or whether he was just running along the wall, right? And away from the inside leg.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, I love it. That's fantastic. Well, I can't wait for that. You said the article is finished, just not yet released, correct?
Exactly.
It'll come out soon. So, anybody that wants to get that article, you can subscribe to our newsletter on our website, artisticdressage.com. You can subscribe to the newsletter. While you're at it, you can grab the free ebook that we put together on Quick Start Guide on starting the horse at the long rein. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
When you sign up for that, you'll be on our newsletter. So,
Perfect. Good. Fantastic. So let's see. I feel like we could talk forever. This is really great. This is so well. So, but I feel like, again, I want to be respectful of your time, and I won't lie, I've got a bunch of horses to ride today too. So I'm fortunate to be able to do that here in this downtime. But so I've got some questions here, kind of some wrap up questions, unless there's something else that you want to touch on that we haven't talked about yet specifically.
No, I think that's fine.
Okay, awesome. Okay. So what would you give as one actionable tip or thought for riders that they could either ponder on or work on today?
Wow, that's a good question. Only one?
Well, we could certainly do a few.
You have any idea?
Don't look at me.
One thing. The old master said that balance and suppleness are the cornerstones of dressage. And I find that really true, that every problem you run into, gymnastic training problem, seems to have a very strong element of loss of balance and muscles locking up and bracing, right? So if you just keep improving the balance, and balance includes straightness, the lateral balance,
straightness, right? And support.
Exactly. When you keep improving that, the horses can release a lot of muscle tension, and then what is left over in braced stiff muscles, you can then supple through targeted exercises, right? So if you make that sort of your guideline, and that predates the training scale, this balance and suppleness, and for me, that's always a really important guideline for the training. Always look to improve the balance, and then hunt for locked up, braced, stiff muscles and try to release the tension there.
Fantastic. I love it. So a question for each of you. What's a recent book that you've read or video that you've watched?
Horses or not horses?
Tiger King. I'm reading this right now. It's Feldenkrais book, Awareness Through Movement.
I think
by
it was the
Moshe
first
Feldenkrais.
one.
Yeah, I'm reading that right now. I can. It's sort of like reading Steinbrecht for me,
Mm.
Gustav Steinbrecht. I can paragraph or two, and then I have to sit there and ponder it to go, and then I go back and read it.
Yes.
So I've been reading it for a little while now, a couple paragraphs at a time. So it's going slow. It's interesting, very interesting.
Fantastic. Good.
Yeah.
And you?
For me, the last book was probably Miguel Tabora's book. Don't remember the title right now. A Spanish trainer, but really, really good book. Very interesting thoughts in there. And Dom Diogo de Braganza on French and Portuguese dressage. Very, very thoughtful book. Very, very good information. I can recommend that highly. In English, it's available in English, and it's from a Portuguese author. So yeah.
Fantastic. Cool. That sounds really great. Let's see. What is something that the horse has given to you?
They're incredible mirrors into ourselves.
Yeah.
That's for me. They've given me the realization that I need to look into myself. Whenever I see a problem in the horse, I need to look to myself first. And it's not just the physical stuff. Often it's the emotional stuff. They're incredible mirrors. They reflect back everything that we're doing. They're so straight and so honest. Even the dishonest ones are honest, and that they will give you feedback right away, whether you want it or not.
That's similar for me. I mean, the horses have always confronted me with my own weaknesses, character flaws, dark sides in a way. And and if you want to get better, you have to address those somehow. You have to accept that, well, this is how I am, this is who I am, and now I need to work on this to get better. And lately it's more and more the I don't know, I guess the awareness, it's hard to put into words. More the I don't know, emotional, psychological, spiritual development level communication with the horse, trying to tune in and trying to understand where they are emotionally, intellectually, mentally, what frame of mind, and then trying also becoming aware of where you are at the moment and trying to, I don't know, put yourself in a place where you can meet the horse and give the horse what he needs, also emotionally, psychologically, mentally, and so on, right? So that it's balanced and calibrated on that level too, beyond that sport and athletic development, and so these mental aspects, they're interesting, challenging. So without the horses, I wouldn't have had to do that. so to speak, wouldn't have become aware of it.
For sure. Fantastic. Well, that definitely is a great lead into the next question here. This is a constant journey of discovery and improvement. What areas of your horsemanship or self-development are you currently working on or wanting to improve?
Good question. That's a good question. What area of your horsemanship are you working on?
Right now I'm really interested. I'm applying a lot of the masters and stuff and working on body work with the horse on the ground, but also energy, playing with energy with the horse. It's something that I've been working on and off through the years, but I didn't ride for a few years, and I'm back to riding again. So I get to I'm back in the saddle, back on the ground with the horse, working with that. And I really like working with energy on different levels with the horse. That's really, my current field of exploration.
Yeah, for me, it's exploring some of the Feldenkrais concepts with the horses, seeing how you can apply the to training horses. And these mental, psychological aspects to, I don't know, in a sense, achieve more with less, would probably be sort of the ultimate goal, if you can tune in more to what the horse is thinking and feeling, then maybe you can make better choices of what am I going to do today? How am I going to respond to this? which exercise am I going to select? Am I going to ride? Am I not going to ride? Am I going to do something else with the horse? These things, instead of just power through it. So
Perfect. Good. So this one I think is sometimes my favorite question. If you had a giant billboard advertisement for the whole world to see, what would be the message you'd put on it?
You can learn this.
I love that.
Yeah, it's true for riding, definitely. It's learnable, it's figure outable.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know where to look, in a sense, to get information, and you have to look at everything that happens as data.
Mm-hmm.
Even if something goes horribly wrong, it's data. Then you think about, why did it go wrong? Where did that come from? When you see a mistake, think of it as a symptom, and then think of it, in terms of where does that come from? Like you see a flower somewhere, the flower has roots, right? So find the roots, and it's the same. Rather than trying to fiddle with some surface level symptoms, try to get to the bottom of it. Where does it come from? What causes it? And then, when you think in these causal terms, then you make a lot more progress, a lot faster progress.
Everything means something, but it doesn't necessarily mean what you think it means. So you have to investigate it further.
Yeah. Awesome. Fantastic. I love it. So I know we've mentioned a couple times, but one final time here, how can folks find you? How can they find out more information?
Our website, artisticdressage.com. And you can sign up for our newsletter. You can sign up for we have several freebies on there, but our newest one is the How to Start the Horse at the Long Rein guide. And also you can find us on Facebook, the Ritter Dressage on Facebook. Yeah.
Exactly.
And we also have a free group called the Artistic Dressage Community. You're welcome to join us in there. Yeah. Sometimes we talk about training issues. Sometimes we talk about life issues. We share jokes and stuff. It's a fun community and really nice, safe place. It's really important for us that we create a really safe place where nobody gets attacked.
Yeah. Fantastic. That's great. Well, Thomas and Shana, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much. I'm really glad we got the opportunity to do this.
Yeah. Thank you. It was
Thank
enjoyable
you for having
for
us
us too.
on, and I hope we get to do it again. We'll have to start doing our own interviews and have you on.
Yeah, I know.
Oh boy, there we go. That always makes me anxious, being in the hot seat. I like being on the controlling side of things.
I know, me too.
No, that would be great fun. Yeah, and I look forward to putting this together again also. So that'll be great. Cool. All right. If I could have you guys hang on just a minute, I'll do our closing here and then we'll chat a little after.
Yeah.
So, gang, I want to thank you so much for tuning in for episode number 47 of Talking About Horses. I really appreciate you giving Thomas, Shana, and I your ear for this time. Please remember that if you've missed any of it, you can access the full broadcast through Facebook, YouTube, iTunes eventually, or by streaming directly from my website by accessing the Talking About Horses page from the education drop-down menu. And through whatever platform you're listening, please be sure to give us a rating, a comment, a review, and maybe a share with your friends. Thanks so much, gang, and tune in next time.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Talking About Horses with Patrick King. If you enjoyed today's show, please leave a review and subscribe. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit pkhorsemanship.com. We'll catch you next time.